Welcome to SVG-TV News and Sports for Tuesday, January 14th, 2014. I am Jennifer Richardson with the details. A new state-of-the-art computer lab is now in commission at the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College Division of Technical and Vocational Education. The lab was officially handed over earlier today by the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, the NTRC, under the Universal Smart Fund USF SMART project. Delivering the feature address at the ceremony, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Commerce and Information Technology Camilo Gonzalez announced that he will pay for the internet of 10 students who meet certain requirements. We get more on today's handing over ceremony in this report.
Up with modern times means getting a modern quality education. This was the aim of all the stakeholders involved in the 2012 signing of a new state-of-the-art computer lab at the SVG Technical College that has now been completed and ready for commission. The lab, funded by the Universal Service Fund, the USF, is air-conditioned and retrofitted with Apple and Lenovo-based computers to be used by registered students of the college. Deputy Director of the SVG Community College, Nigel Scott, said he believes that the lab will help get the citizens of SVG out of the proverbial technological desert.
These challenging economic times, we must seek to develop citizens that are not just consumers, but also producers. Not just users, but also providers. The education we provide must prepare our students for employment as well as to be employers.
USF Administrator and the NTRC, Karen Duncan, outlined some of the features in the new lab.
The room has now been transformed into a state-of-the-art resource lab consisting of 35 high-powered computers, of which 15 are 27-inch iMacs and 20 are 21-inch Livono desktops. These computers have 16 gigs of RAM and also have specialized software such as Visual Studio, AutoCAD, Final Cut Pro, Adobe Creative Suite 6, Xcode to aid students in audiovisual production.
The lab also features a mural of influential Vincentians as well as other persons.
In addition to these computers, a mural depicting local and regional innovators was also painted at the back of the room to increase the aesthetics of the location. Local innovators such as Roland Scrapey-Dopwell in the area of mass design, Dr. Rosalind Ambrose, who is the first trained female Vincentian radiologist, and Leslie Prince, who is a local volcanologist, have all been included in the painting.
The SMART project was implemented to facilitate the necessary infrastructure and platforms at the college, and Dean of the Division of Technical and Vocational Education, Osborne Bowens, said as a result new programs will be established.
The excitement has just begun. The public can now look forward to begin registering in the first cohort of students to our mobile application development certificate program.
But the biggest news of the event seemed to have been Senator Camilo Gonzalez's announcement to sponsor 10 students across the country with free internet.
The first 10 students that don't have internet access at home and who meet the means test, your internet is on me for the next year. So we can have Leslie Jack send me the bill for 10 students who do not currently have internet at home. Please go to the NTRC, go to Lime, fill out the application and send me the bill.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Commerce and Information Technology appealed to persons to take advantage of the over 200 places available for persons to get internet access at $10 a month. For SVG-TV News, I am Zulika Lois.
Meanwhile, Minister of Information and Technology Camilo Gonzalez is of the view that SVG has a digital content deficit. According to Gonzalez, too much information is being consumed by persons here with little to none being produced locally.
All of us here go online. We have access to the internet, one shape either here or at home. Maybe on our computers, our laptops, our tablets, our smartphones. And we consume information. but there is very little production. There's very little that we are producing on the other side of the thing. So we have a digital content deficit here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where if you take out music that we produce digitally, and you take out maybe this very same selfies that you take on your pictures and you export those onto the internet, beyond that, almost all of the digital content within the borders of St. Vincent and the Grenadines comes from somewhere else.
Gonsalves added that the official handing over of the new state-of-the-art computer lab to the Technical College is one step closer towards combating the problem of the lack of digital content here.
Almost all of the apps on your phone, if not all of the apps on your phones and tablets, come from somewhere else. They were designed by someone else, using someone else's visual aesthetic, using someone else's cultural preferences, using someone else's intelligence. And the profit is going to someone else. We have to, if we're going to be a modern society, we have to reverse or balance that digital content deficit. This is the beginning of that attempt to address and redress the digital content deficit.
$2,000 is up for grabs between now and the next 3 months for any student who is able to create a mobile app. This was announced earlier today by General Manager of LIAM Leslie Jack as he addressed the handing over ceremony of the new state-of-the-art computer lab at the SVG Technical College. Jack also announced that come April this year, his company will be providing Vincentians with 4G. 4G is known as the 4th generation of mobile phone communication technology standards, which also provides mobile ultra-broadband internet access.
To the partnership that we have with suppliers as well as the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, LIAM will be launching 4G in April. So get ready. Here is the challenge. The challenge goes out to any student that can build the best mobile app. The best mobile app will win themselves $2,000 US.
A 3-day workshop on volcanic risk officially commenced here today, and according to the workshop organizers, among the objectives is the focus on potential impact of and response to future eruptions. The workshop is organized by the National Emergency Management Organization in collaboration with the University of East Anglia, UK, and the Seismic Research Centre. The other objective of the workshop is to explore the awareness and importance of volcanic risk from the perspective of decision makers, government officials, emergency responders, monitoring agencies, and the Vincentian public. The workshop also seeks to explore how risk communication varies between social groups and the mechanisms by which messages and information are transferred. Speaking at the opening ceremony, Director of NEMO Howie Prince said the workshop is timely, though it comes at a time when the country is seeking to deal with the effects of a natural disaster.
I speak, there are still 174 persons in shelters around the country. In addition to that 174 persons, there are many, many families that are displaced. The damage assessment is still ongoing, but I can safely tell you that the counts that we've seen has already put the figure for damage assessment in excess of $100 million US. And counting. The official figures in terms of the preliminary damage assessment will be released later today, I believe by the Honorable Prime Minister. But those of us who have worked on these statistics stand in awe of what we've seen from a flood which lasted just 6 hours, but in the space of that time disturbed, displaced, and dismantled most of our major systems in the country.
Prince says he is confident that the three-day workshop, which concludes on Friday, January 17th, will be beneficial in preparing SVG in the event of a volcanic eruption.
You can see that we have a well-studied cast of actors who will, over the course of the next week, work with local actors who will put together a plan and some discussions, will hold discussions and put together, hopefully, part of a communication plan on how we would react to the hazard involved when volcano erupts. This workshop today will speak to communication during volcano and volcanic eruptions. And it would hopefully make sure that we don't repeat this mistake of not having the right communication packages and the right communication voices that will speak to people before, during, and after a volcanic eruption.
Meanwhile, Executive Officer of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, Ronald Jackson, says it is very important that the awareness levels of citizens are high and that the systems of risk communication are built for various stakeholders.
History has shown that communication is certainly very, very important. In the 1979 volcanic eruption, it was said that no lives were lost, and this was because of the early warning that was provided. And so this workshop comes at a very, very critical and important time. Some would question why now, when we are dealing with the aftermath of a flood. Why is the focus on earthquakes? But what it really underscores is that we live in an environment which has a multiple of risk, not just the floods, not just the hurricanes. And an environment where you don't necessarily have to have a season for specific types of hazards to impact a community. And as we've seen in many, many instances, we've seen man-induced events as well as natural occurring hazards happening at the very same time. In fact, during the floods in Christmas, there are a number of events. It wasn't just the floods. You know, we saw the potential for an air disaster happening in St. Lucia and fires happening at the same time.
And a seismologist at the Seismic Research Center, Dr. Joan Latchman, says while the memory of major natural disasters such as volcanic eruptions and earthquakes passes with the passing of each generation, it is imperative that the region be prepared at all times in the event of a disaster. Latchman says the region needs to come to a stage where it can experience a big earthquake and it does not sustain hundreds of thousands of deaths.
And big earthquakes, big damaging earthquakes in our region can go from 30 for those in the magnitude 7 range, 30 years, to 100 years for those in the magnitude 8 range. West Indians have begun to think that God is a West Indian and none of these things will happen again. But anytime we have an opportunity, we disabuse our people of this notion. These events can and will occur in our future, and we need to be prepared. And it is possible to be prepared. And it does not fly in the face of God to be prepared. The people in Chile, they are prepared and they have their big earthquakes far more often than we do. And the kind of devastation that we see in our region, that we saw in Haiti, does not happen in Chile and does not happen in Japan. We don't have any nuclear power plants, so we don't have to worry about that.
Prime Minister Dr. Rav Gonsalves has expressed thanks to those who have lent support, including the organizers of several benefit concerts for the victims of the recent disaster. Speaking at the handing-over ceremony yesterday of $100,000 to National Emergency Management Organization NEMO by the National Lotteries Authority, Dr. Gonsalves said it is good to have all hands on deck with the rehabilitating process.
Rise Up concert is to provide resources towards the refurbishment of the maternity wing at the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital, a very worthy cause, which was damaged severely during the storm and which we have to rehabilitate. I thank the National Lottery, I thank their leadership, I thank NEMO, I thank the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and above all, I thank Almighty God for His abundant blessings upon us.
Meantime, the Prime Minister is calling on Vincentians who were not seriously affected by the weather system to be considerate as the government conducts the needs assessment for building material and other needed resources.
So if you have a need for a few sheets of galvanized to go on your car porch, please don't come and ask for it, because it wouldn't be fair and reasonable. If you have your driveway which need a few sacks of cement to fix, please don't come and ask for the few sacks of cement for that. Let us address persons with need, a real need, immediately. People who are suffering.
Dr. Gonsalves made it clear that the government is committed to helping everyone despite their political affiliation.
So I said to everybody, fear not. This Prime Minister and this government will continue to ensure that every commodity which is distributed, food, fridges, stoves, building materials, anything, I give the assurance will be done without any of those biases or discrimination contrary to the Constitution which we have been sworn to uphold.
Minister of Ecclesiastical Affairs Maxwell Charles says the recent disaster did not only impact those who suffered losses but all Vincentians. Charles was at the time addressing a benefit concert on Sunday at the Victoria Park.
All victims, ladies and gentlemen, they need our support. Let us stand by them in this, the hour of healing, especially those who have lost their loved ones. You see, the material things can be replaced, but it is very difficult indeed to replace a loved one.
Charles also expressed gratitude to those who have reached out to affected persons, noting that those who give will receive God's blessings.
Your bread baskets will always be full. I remember the businesses who chipped in and gave bountifully. At this moment, I say, may God bless you and enable your business to grow from strength to strength.
The issue of deforestation here needs to be addressed urgently. That's according to Forestry Officer for the Caribbean, Claus Martin Eckelman, speaking at a media conference yesterday hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture. Eckelman pointed out that a forest which is pristine and not affected does far better than a forest which was replaced.
Cultivation of marijuana. So on the long term, this is something which needs to be addressed. While the forest is important to retain as much of the water in the upper watersheds at the incidence of a strong rain, we have to make sure that the river and river banks downstream are open and can facilitate the flow of the water. So if these rivers are getting blocked with logs, debris, then we end up with flooding, and it only aggravates the situation in the floodplains. So while we have to assure that the forest in the upper watersheds is intact, in the lower watersheds we have to ensure that there's a good flow of stream of water out into the sea, and that the riverbanks are protected, that they do not collapse and build kind of artificial ponds and water puddles which kind of end up in creating flash floods further down.
Eckelman also warned about the dangers of building houses and other infrastructure along riverbeds.
And if we have rain incidences of 200 millimeters, which are likely to happen here normally in the tail after hurricanes, but they can also independently from hurricane incidents, we will always have to live with the likelihood of having these strong rainfalls. And this is something now, as we rebuild the damage, we have to think of, if in some place there was a river and there was a waterfall flow, most likely, maybe not today, tomorrow or in 50 or 100 years, the water will come back. Now, when we now rebuild, we have to keep that in mind.
$500,000 worth of food will be donated to persons throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines who have been affected by the recent disaster. This contribution, in addition to a credit facility for building material, will be made by Corrales and Hazels Incorporated, which announced the initiative at a media conference earlier today. Managing Director of Corrales Hazels Incorporated, Joel Providence, says the company has been in discussion with the government to aid in the reconstruction of some homes which were damaged during the disaster.
It is our civic responsibility to make a contribution as citizens of this country. As I said, that the damage, as we all know, has been tremendous. Further, we shall contribute a special line of credit valued at $1.5 million towards the government with regard to the purchase of building materials. We expect that this line of credit will be extended for 6 months in the first instance, but it is likely, given the extent of the recovery effort, to run, we believe, for most of 2014.
Divisional Manager of Corrales Building Supplies, Brian George, outlined some of the other initiatives Corrales and Hazels will be undertaking as part of the company's contribution to the relief efforts.
We're willing to offer discounts as much as 25% on materials for persons. Now, this is extensive, so that there might be a slight verification process involved with it, but we won't allow that to be a stumbling block. So as well as the traditional materials that persons would have expected, being lumber, cement, steel, plywood, items such as fencing products. As we all know, there are a number of fences across the country that got damaged and so on. Persons do have to repaint after they've done the rebuilding. Those types of items, all of those of which shall be part of the same special assistance that we're providing for those persons.
Meanwhile, Manager for Corrales Food Division, Jimmy Ford, says the company was able to put together a significant package for the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, to distribute to various shelters and communities. He added that when one is affected, all are affected.
We are simply delivering cases to NEMO, and they will then repackage it to suit the various persons in the communities. We'll then, after they have repackaged the product, we use our resources to deliver it to the various shelters, whether it's in Rose Bank, South Rivers, Spring Village, wherever. So we're making our presence felt there. We feel hurt by the experience and therefore have a tremendous need to assist as much as we can.